All right. Now we're definitely live. Definitely here live with Mr. Tom Hudson of 515 Vape and Disc Golf. How's it going today, brother?
Not too bad, not too bad. Glad to be here.
It's been a long time since I have interacted with you.
It's been a busy few weeks for me, so
And I just want to make sure that everything's good. It looks like we're dropping frames, which could be bad, but we'll go ahead and pay attention to that and make sure that I'm actually having technical difficulties. But that was a minute ago, so we'll see. I'll message someone and make sure that we're actually live. Hold on. Because I'm still seeing please stand by on the screen. I should see you, I do believe. So give me a second. This is very amateur and unprofessional. It says we're live.
alright.
Oh, we're definitely talking, bro. Okay. We're good then. All right. So, first of all, let's start I don't know how long you've been in the vaping industry or, how you got started or what made you go down that path. So maybe you could start by, telling us that story of how you became a vape shop owner.
For sure. So, a couple years ago, a few years ago now, I guess, wow, 6, 7 years ago, I owned a corporate cleaning company, and that's kind of what I was doing. I was doing commercial cleaning. We were doing residential cleaning. My job was pretty much writing contracts. I did some residential work in off hours, but I walked into a vape shop for the first time, and I wanted to quit smoking. Like I'd been a smoker for 10 plus years. My girlfriend, my fiance now, and a few weeks, my wife, was also more of a social smoker. Smoked when we were out drinking, smoked when other people were drinking. But that was about it. But we both wanted to quit that. The smell, the taste, the cost, I mean, everything. We just wanted to stop. So actually, it wasn't a vape shop. It was a kiosk in a mall. A friend of mine had just opened. So I was like, I'm going to go give this a shot. I was his first customer that morning, and I bought what's called a volcano device. This was like way back in the day. It was pretty much
Like
all that was
the
available.
big volcano device? Or we're
No,
talking
different
something
company.
smaller? Okay.
Different company, but it was a little vape pen. It leaked. It didn't work very well. It was, oh, whoops. It was an interesting device to say the least.
Okay.
So, it didn't really work. It didn't stick. I went back to smoking. We moved to Des Moines shortly after that, though, and I walked into a legitimate e-cigarette shop.
Okay.
And we might talk about that later on, but the difference between just the mall kiosk and a legitimate vape shop. And I got the help I needed. I was shown a device that would actually hit like a cigarette, that would mimic that feel, that taste, and I was off to the races. For me, it was an overnight switch.
Yep.
The cigarettes were gone. Vaping became my safer alternative to combustible tobacco immediately. My girlfriend, not so much. It was tough. She went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for a long time. So, that's just something to note there. It doesn't take the first time for everybody. It's not easy for everybody, but it is for some. For me, it was overnight. I've been vaping ever since. So that got me into e-cigarettes. We just moved to Des Moines. The corporate cleaning company wasn't taking off here like it was in Eastern Iowa. It was a lot more work for not a lot of pay. At that time, a friend of mine was running a couple locations, a couple e-cigarette stores here in Des Moines. He just needed some help because he'd lost some guys, didn't have anybody he trusted. I was like, I'll help out a few hours here or there. Did that for a while on some Fridays, some Saturdays, kind of fell in love with the business side of it. I'd never been in retail at the upper level. So seeing that and how it was run, I was like, man, I could do this. Partnered with another guy, started an e-liquid line, was distributing that throughout the country. At that point, I started what was called RGV Distro, play on Run Good Vapes, which was sidetrack YouTube channel.
Yep.
I started reviewing the e-liquids I was vaping.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so you can still find it on YouTube, Run Good Vapes. I haven't put up reviews for a long time.
Wait, so your stream initially, before you started streaming poker, you were doing vape reviews?
So it got to like
I didn't know that.
3,000 subs, which isn't a lot.
No,
but
that
like
is what? What do you
Yeah.
mean that's a lot? Come on.
Companies were sending me all sorts of stuff to review, to get on the channel. And that's when I was like, well, wait, some of these guys want me to actually sell their product. So I went on the road with RGV Distro. I was selling my own product at the time. some of their products. It was a lot of work with Vape Shop at that level. For every month you're losing stores because they got to constantly bring in new products, so you have to gain those stores.
Yep.
And I loved it because I was selling e-liquid during the day and I was playing poker at night. I was stopping all over the country, and I planned my trips on where I had free hotel rooms. So I'd spend my evening playing PLO wherever I could find it.
Right.
And I would spend my days selling e-liquid, and it was going great. I enjoyed it. I loved it. My girlfriend at the time, Tanya, she wanted me to be back in Des Moines more because to make a good living doing that, you're on the road full time, and I wasn't big enough to have a staff. So I came back to Des Moines. At the time, I was holding meetings with local vape shop owners here in Iowa just to encourage them and to know how can I be of assistance to you guys? What can I do for you? So about once a month, we'd go out to breakfast. At the end of one of those breakfast meetings, a guy I'd known for quite a lot of time came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, my shop's failing. I don't know what to do. I need some help." So we made an agreement. I went into business with them, turned their shop around, quickly developed it into a legitimate store with a pretty good level of traffic. Later on, as business partners go, we didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. I had a lot of business experience. He did not. And we decided to part ways, and I was bought out of that, which was better for me anyway. I had a bigger vision. I'm very business minded. I wanted to go bigger. So a part of that agreement, they paid me off over time. I agreed not to do anything locally until that was over. The day that was over, 515 Vape and Disc Golf opened, and we were prepared. We were ready. That was here in Des Moines and Clive. That opened December 15th of 2017. So we're coming up on 2 years. I'm pretty open book, so I know a lot of people in the vape industry are probably going to watch this after it's over.
Yeah.
But we started that store with $20,000. There wasn't a big investment. There wasn't a lot of money, but I was known in the vape industry. My business partner that I did go into business with was known in the disc golf world, and it ballooned. Instantly, we had the Iowa Disc Golf support. All those guys that vape were buying their vape gear with us. And it quickly just.
So is that kind of like, I was gonna ask, like, how did you decide to pair vape with disc golf? Was that kind of
So it was like throwing slime at a wall. We were like, we're gonna see. We're not putting a lot of money into this. We're gonna see if it works.
Yeah.
If it falls, it's okay. If it sticks, we're gonna take off. And we never imagined or dreamed of how good that combination was.
Right.
I mean, so many disc golfers vape. So many vapors have gotten into disc golf because of it. It was just a really good pair on trying to create a healthier lifestyle. And a lot of disc golfers are alternative anyway, so they're open to the idea of vaping. And it really it paired better than we could have ever imagined. There are some obstacles that it presents as well. We don't sponsor junior events. It's really hard to get into the under 18 developing crowd in disc golf.
So is 18 is the legal age in
Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm taking notes internally.
For sure. So here it's 18. So it's hard to sponsor stuff like that. So there have been some challenges. We sponsor 20 or 21 players locally, and some of those players, at times, they're like, do I really have to wear vape big across my chest?
Right. I mean, it's understandable. It's still tobacco, right? I mean.
Yeah, and our logo, if you haven't seen it, it's vape's the big part of the logo, because we knew that was going to be the money maker, and Correct. It is a large section of our business. So anyway, that store grew like that. Within 10 months, we opened our second store. Second store was in a hyper aggressive market as well. It blossomed very quickly. So we've been super blessed.
So you just have two locations only right now?
We have two. Okay. And we were ready for 3 and 4, and we were about to sign on 3 when we could tell some stuff was coming down the pipeline that might not be good for the industry as a whole. So we kind of slowed down. 2 stores at the volume we're doing creates a pretty comfortable life. So I wasn't in a pretty big hurry to do that. We wanted to see
what kind of red flags were you seeing then?
Play it out. There was some talks. One T21 right here in Iowa is a prime example. Raising the minimum age for vaping to 21. It's a big market. One of our stores wouldn't be affected much at all. One of our stores is a much younger clientele. It's near a college campus. Lots of college kids in that location. And even with what's going on that we'll talk about, that's also affected that, because the younger audience is more they're just influenced easier. So what they see in the media, what they see is going to affect
Yep.
that. But also, if T21 would have passed, it would have been detrimental to that location. At the time here in Iowa, it was the first red flag for us. So we had no opposition. So obviously, being young in the legislative side of things, our initial fight was no way, we can't go T21. It's going to hurt us.
Yep.
So I'm also an executive board member of Iowans for Alternatives to Smoking and Tobacco. I've been very involved with that since I've been here locally. I'm now the acting secretary. Yay. But but anyway, we decided at that time we were going to fight T21.
Right.
The only reason T21 wasn't put into place was we had a committee meeting that I went to. It was very publicized here in Iowa. I spoke there, but holy crap, there's more.
Was that the one that I?
As we speak? So sorry, there's stuff coming
No,
up.
no, no, it's fine. Was that the one that you? Is that the bill that you were actually fighting against when I saw the stuff that?
Yeah,
Like last
when
year
we were
you
at the
taking
Iowa
videos and
legislature.
okay.
Yeah, I was spending almost as much time meeting with congressional members as I was in my shops. But that was the big one, was that hearing with that committee hearing. What happened there was we kind of got lucky with T21, and that session was almost over in Iowa, and they didn't have time. So in Iowa, we have this weird gap from May to January. Their session is not in. None of our legislation is full time. They have careers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're different things. So they break in May, and nothing really happens till January unless it's an emergency.
It's a very efficient government we have going on.
Exactly. So we kind of got lucky in that, and it wasn't a win. We know when they come back to session, if it hasn't been done federally, it's most likely going to happen here. But this is also a great example of those in our industry growing and learning as we move through this process. Now, there's a lot of reasons to support T21. And now it's one of my 5 or 6 points in talking with legislation and working with legislation now that we're willing to concede that. And I am personally to a point where I don't think it's a concession. I think it's a smart move.
It's responsible, yeah. For
sure. A lot of people are going to say they don't agree with that, and I get that. If you're 18, you can go to war, you should vape, you should smoke. And it's tough from the business standpoint, knowing that making it more difficult to reach those underage is an effective medium. They're still going to get it. I know, older brothers, friends, we get it, gas stations.
But so when I've been talking to people about it though, when you up it even by 3 years, you still have seniors in high school that are 18, so they're able to go and buy it so if you take it even out of that high school level, they're still going to get it from friends and older, but it's harder. You make the access a little bit harder still.
Yep. And that's why I think 19 is the perfect number, but nobody wants to respond. There are a few states that have responded to 19, and I believe there's a state or two that even implemented it. I'd love to see down the road stats if things continue on how that affected it, because without data, everything's just an assumption.
Well, it's 21. It's 21 here in Massachusetts, and I think Connecticut. Most of New England is,
there's
they
a
kind
lot
of they kind of just
Northeast.
move. Like New England is literally, they call it New England for a reason. When one person does something, it's kind of like the same thing goes on. So.
And that's the problem with the bans right now. Is Massachusetts went crazy,
and then Rhode Island wants to go crazy too.
And Massachusetts was like, "Hey, hold my beer."
That's exactly what happened. So to get us back on track, so I wanted to ask you: last year, was that the first time that you have ever participated in like going to speak in front of a body of government, or
was anything off limits? No. Okay.
I'm
you're totally good. You're totally good. So really interesting note. And again, this is 10 years later, how much we progress as people is amazing. Like looking back on different areas of my life and the growth that's happened in it is incredible. And in so many different areas of my life, poker, money management, how I look at poker, how I look at my career, how I look at my relationship, how I look at my kid, so I was lucky, I guess I can say, to grow up in Iowa City, very progressive town, very forward thinking. And when Occupy Wall Street started, it was kind of a madhouse. It was a mess, you know.
Yeah.
But I was lucky in Iowa City. There was a group of people that was very involved, but was involved in a tactical way. Like they had missions, they had goals. It wasn't a bunch of people camping out homeless. Like it was monitored and it was controlled. So I was kind of active in that as an outsider, more on the political side. So I spoke at several hearings there. I was kind of a liaison between some of their committees and the actual legislators in Iowa City. And what's cool is, you know, looking back at it in other groups in other cities, we were one of the only groups that actually enacted change in our community. And that was really cool to see. Our community leaders were responsive to us as well through that, because we acted in a little different way. You know, it wasn't screw the government and that.
Right.
We actually looked and identified problems within our community, and we wanted to work on them. And we were lucky to have legislation in Iowa City that was responsive to that. So it wasn't my first rodeo, but I will admit it was my first rodeo that I was extremely passionate about.
Yeah. I would have been I would have been ready to shit my pants, dude, talking in front of all
I don't know if you saw the video. So,
I saw some of it, but I was just like, oh.
So our program, Iowans for Alternatives Smoking and Tobacco, we had like 7 or 8 business owners there.
Yeah.
And one of them had a secretary that was filming everyone. And there was a video released of each of us. And mine, I'm like, I'm so nervous, but it's because I'm so passionate, you know?
Right, no.
Like if I were to speak on it now, I'm so much more knowledgeable about what's going on. It'd be a little different. But yeah, I was ready to shit my pants.
I just don't like doing adult things, especially in a professional setting. Like even putting on the suit and tie would automatically give me anxiety. So.
Oh yeah, I don't wear. I wear jeans to weddings, bro. Like, so I get you. And that's what's weird is like, I was just talking about this the other day. Is like as we grow up, it's like when are we gonna finally grow up?
Right.
Like I'm 35. And I look around and I feel like I'm still like, when am I going to grow up in some ways? Because it's like, it's just that you think that there's like this click when you become an adult that you're going to think differently and act differently.
Yeah, Joe Rogan actually does a bit about that. He goes, I'm 15 and then I turn around and I'm at the line of the grocery store checking out and someone's calling me sir, and he's like, how the fuck did that happen? Yeah, when I become adult, everything's supposed to make sense and nothing still like you have to seek that out in order for stuff to make sense. You actually have to, make an effort to go learn about this kind of stuff. And that's kind of like leads us on to our next topic. In order to like the way that the media and the way that the government is portraying this whole like vape obstacle, is they're portraying it way differently because they know that the masses aren't educated about this.
Absolutely.
And as long as they get those clicks, they get those likes, they get someone to read a headline, because most people aren't taking an effort to go and make themselves knowledgeable about a certain topic. They scroll through their Facebook feed, they scroll through their Twitter feed, they read a headline, and then that's it. So that's how it's reporting. Like Time Magazine, I've read a bunch of articles on this stuff, obviously. Yeah, but Time Magazine is literally the headline I read today. They were like, THC appears to be the problem in the lung. Like that's it. That's the article. THC appears to be the problem in lung disease. That's it. That's the headline, and that's all that people see. So therefore, they're like, wait, I thought we've gotten past this, right? I thought we've gotten.
Yeah, CDA's newest release is literally like, hey, THC's the leading cause of our vaping epidemic, but they still like attack vaping through the whole thing, and
they're attacking THC and vaping all in the same sentence, and they're saying the biopsies of these lungs tested positive for THC. I was like, we've been smoking weed and tobacco for centuries.
Yeah,
centuries.
Something changed.
And you can't just all of a sudden decide that THC now in someone's lungs is toxic. Like,
absolutely, and I could derail this so quickly because I'm not going to, but I was at a Dean. I don't know if you guys know or who Dean Graziosi is or whatever, the real estate icon.
Yeah.
So he runs this like educational, go flip real estate and use our program and get rich.
Yes,
right?
Those are my favorite.
Yeah, so he's a really good author and he writes really good books.
Yeah.
But his programs are kind of BS. Well, they had a big thing in town last night. So a buddy of mine was like, I want this book. I don't want anything that they're selling, but I want this book.
Yeah.
Come with me. And of course, I want to see how they speak, how they deliver,
Mm-hmm.
what, how they present their message. And it was a scam like crazy. But it was, most of their audience was the lottery chasers, the get rich quick,
Yes.
and it's like those people don't take the time to get educated. And what's sad
Right.
about that is it completely translates to our media and
Yes.
how our media attacks different subjects. Locally, we have one news outlet that is attacking
Yeah,
this.
I saw you
It's
post an article yesterday. Holy moly.
unbelievable, KCCI, and they are attacking it so hard. But we have to remember, like, the owners of these media outlets are ultra rich people,
Yeah,
and they
of
have
course.
investments in other places, and they're pushing propaganda. So, like, I don't want to get ultra political, but today, and Donald Trump, when he went crazy today in front of the press,
that's a dangerous name around here, brother.
yeah, he went crazy in the Oval Office today in front of the press at a meeting, and he's like, it's no longer fake news, it's corrupt news.
Oh,
But it sadly, like, his point's correct,
yeah,
though,
that's actually
because
correct. He just
yeah, because our media isn't owned by bipartisan people.
no.
Our media, all these media outlets are private organizations owned usually by, they're not even publicly traded. They're owned by individuals that have agendas. Like, they have money,
They
they
have
have
agendas,
agendas.
and they want and all they care about is the ratings. So I mean,
Yep. So they want clicks, and what's getting clicks, they're going to
yes.
keep talking about.
And but people don't realize the influence that when you watch that shit every day, like the 24-hour news cycle is actually bad for people.
Oh, it's horrible because they got to fill it.
It's a daytime soap opera though at this point.
Absolutely. So that takes us to Wednesday, September 11th, which is when everything changed.
Yeah.
All it took for our industry to turn into a tailwind off a tornado was Donald Trump in the Oval Office with the head of the FDA and a few media people, which is what they do when they want something to get out. They act like they're just having a meeting, and they talk about a few different topics, and then vape comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump attacks vape in that meeting. The head of the FDA says, well, we'll implement the PMTA process effective immediately, which will in turn ban flavors. We're going to work on that. We're going to release it in the next couple weeks. So this goes viral.
But nothing
at
ever
least in our
happened,
industry.
right? Like,
what?
Go ahead. You can go ahead and keep talking, but I'm saying
Yeah.
nothing ever happened, right? They talked
So
about
far
it.
in that regard, nothing has. But
Okay.
he said it would take 2 to 3 weeks. So now we're coming up on the 25th would have been 2 weeks. So we're at about 3 weeks. So we don't know. But out of that meeting, it went viral in our industry. If you were in our industry and you even had a phone or a computer, somebody was calling you. It was online. So in today's day and age, there was a Twitter campaign. We vape, we vote. You ban this, and then all of a sudden, his staff went into, well, let's punch the numbers. How many vapors are there? How many one-issue voters are vapors? And all of a sudden we're going to lose 13 states we won. So 48 hours later, on September 13th, Donald Trump tweets, while I like vaping as an alternative to cigarettes, we need to make sure this alternative is safe for all. Let's get counterfeits off the market and keep young children from vaping.
Hey, man, I actually get counterfeits off the market. I agree with some of that statement. Like,
absolutely, but in a second he flips his Don.
Yeah,
I
of course.
Vaping, and he doesn't want to lose the voting.
You see the Don just sitting. He's like, I love vaping. While he's on the shitter on the Twitter
give me your
account.
vote. It's like, but the problem is with the speed that our media works.
Yeah,
that 48 hours, quite possibly, as we'll discuss, may have killed an entire industry.
Correct.
Like, all it took was media outlets to have 48 hours, and governors all of a sudden. Well, let's just molly right into it.
Yeah, go
governors
ahead. Keep going.
Governors started seeing reasons. Wait, we have this huge problem that we can't talk about, but this might help solve it. Let's start acting on it.
Right.
It started with New York, and I forget what the other initial state was.
I think it was Washington State.
Washington, yeah, and then they dipped out, and now they're slowly dipping back into the game.
But I think they were one of the first. Maybe it was Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Sorry, New York and Michigan. We'll talk a lot about Michigan because they
got some other shit going on.
Woo, Michigan. But anyway, let's go quickly over MSA.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, let's go over the MSA.
I'm a governor. Why do I care about vaping, right? Like, okay, let's see what the FDA is going to do.
So
Isn't
wait,
that
hold.
the
Let me
FDA?
stop you for just a second.
Yeah,
What does MSA stand for? So
yeah,
there's some people.
yeah. So it's like, why would the FDA get involved? Well, here's why. The MSA is the Master Settlement Agreement. Um, at the time, it was in the late '90s. It was the largest civil litigation settlement ever in U.S. history. No settlement between the government and a corporation or a group of corporations has ever happened that even came close to this dollar amount. Uh, the MSA, the Master Settlement Agreement, released participating manufacturers from past and future legal claims for costs incurred by the states for smoking related illnesses and deaths. So, obviously, with Medicaid, Medicare, these organizations in the states and federally were paying all this money to people on their program who were smoking and getting sick.
Yep.
And the states were like, screw this, we're going to go sue the four big companies. So the MSA, the Master Settlement Agreement, was, which I'm just going to refer to as the MSA
But
from
that's
now on.
fine. But now we know what
But
it is, so it's
yeah,
fine.
it was reached because the tobacco companies needed a way out from all these lawsuits
Right.
that would have ultimately led to the death of the tobacco industry. Shucks. Um, but that was reached. So what that meant was annual payments in perpetuity to the settling states would substantially restrict the tobacco companies' ability to advertise, promote, market cigarettes. That was their agreement. We're not going to heavily promote this stuff. That's when cigarette ads came down at football stadiums. That's when the commercials stopped. That's when a lot of media outlets pulled advertising for cigarettes. So these massive annual payments from the tobacco companies to the states
Yep.
started happening April 15th of 2000. It was $12.75 billion for the first 5 years. So we're not talking about pennies. Like this is
Right.
money that in some instances would take a borderline state from in debt to profitable again. Like we didn't have the large scale governments we have now, even 20 years later. So that was just the first 5 years. These payments were to be adjusted for the volume of cigarette shipments in those years compared to the volume in 1997 when it was reached. So if they sell less cigarettes, they get to give less money to the states,
Yeah.
right? Well, the states don't really think about that. Nobody's ever going to stop smoking. So the base amounts of these annual payments did gradually increase over the years. In 2000, they paid 4.5 billion. In 2001, they paid 5 billion. 02 and 03, it was 6.5. So far, 126 billion dollars has been paid as of July of last year.
And they have to
Now,
pay 206 billion by 25 years in, I think.
yeah, something like that amount,
Something insane amount.
unless the rate of shipments
Right.
adjusted to inflation affects that. So the percentage of reductions in cigarette shipment volumes have been greater than the inflation adjustments since 1997.
Right.
So this is their loophole. For the first time in 2018, inflation is exceeding the drop. So they're not making the money that they need to, or that they're obligated to pull this. They're still making a ton of
Correct.
money. So now it's like, why would that matter? So they're just paying the states less, right? Well, the problem is by 2010, 18 states, the District of Columbia, and 2 other territories had taken bonds out against the maximum payments.
Yes.
So we're talking.
So they're betting. They're literally betting. They're literally betting on it. Like they're literally gambling. Yeah, they're literally gambling with taxpayers' money, though.
They're putting it all on red, and it's quite literally on red. So, right now there's over $40 billion currently backed by expected future MSA payments. But as long as the rate of inflation is greater than the drop in cigarette shipments,
yeah,
that number isn't going to match the $40 billion, which is crazy. So that's kind of the MSA. Many state and local government tobacco bonds have been downgraded in recent years because of that. So they're not getting the money in that's going out. So now we see the first 8 states that have either banned e-cigarettes or are talking about banning cigarettes are the 8 states with the largest default risk. And some of them are already in default.
Is the great state of Massachusetts one of them?
Yes. Massachusetts, New York, Michigan. Washington is, I know there's a bunch in that top 8, and they're all talking about banning.
Well, so like I was telling you before we started, I mean, so even through this vape ban here, Massachusetts has definitely been the most hardcore about it. As in,
Ooh,
they're gonna ban flavor. They're like, we ban everything, and
absolutely.
that goes down to everything. I am a medical marijuana patient in the state of Massachusetts, and I cannot go to the dispensary and buy distillate oil in a cartridge that's been tested, regulated, and QA'd by the government. The Cannabis Control Commission controls all those standards. That stuff has all been regulated, but I can't even go get like medicine for my insomnia at the dispensary right now, unless I want to buy flour. And for
Yeah,
some
I was going to
people,
say, I think you're restricted to flour, right?
but what does that do? That drives the prices of flour up now. And
Absolutely.
think about this. Perfect scenario. Let's say you are 75, 76, you're going through chemotherapy and you don't necessarily want to smoke flour, but you like vaping, or you want to buy even you can't even buy distillate right now, as in something that can be vaped. You still can't buy that in a regulated market. So like the full on ban for 4 months here makes no sense. And for me, in my opinion, the only reason you are banning it for 4 months is to put all these people out of business.
So no,
Like
so other
that's
players
the
can come
only
in.
thing. That's the only thing that makes sense. And then when I start reading, after all this shit happened, this was like last Monday or last Tuesday. I'm reading that Philip Morris has a vaping device that's
Oh
coming out,
man,
and it's coming to market, and
yeah,
they spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars,
tens of
and
millions. Yep,
and they said that the regulations that they wrote up, that they submitted to the FDA, was a million pages.
million pages.
A
Yep.
million pages. They could throw Hamlet for the first five, or in the middle somewhere for 500 pages,
Nobody would
because
ever know.
no one's reading that shit. A
Yeah, no one would ever
million
know.
pages?
So and that's what. So how it all started was New York and Michigan. They were the first two. They're like, we're going to ban flavors. We're going to save the kids. That was their excuse.
Right, but well,
Whether
the
it
kids
be
are always the shield, right?
yeah, whether it be MSA, whether it be the IQOS, whether it be the Hail, which is another device we'll talk about. All these things,
What's Oh yeah,
those
keep
were the
going. I'm gonna
two
hear about
states.
that
So
for
those
sure.
two states gave business owners, a length of time to sell their product off. Sucks, they're out of business, but they have time to sell their product.
Right.
Then Massachusetts says, "Hold my beer,"
Yeah, they
and
were like,
she signs it in the emergency order on that night, and the next morning those businesses were
within
closed.
48 hours, all of them.
Yeah. So there were a lot of shop owners, some that I know personally, that had hundreds of thousands of dollars in products
Ugh.
and said, "Well, I'll lock my door when you serve me." And then the serving started the next day. You had state patrol in stores
Yep.
telling people, watching people. There's a video of a health official that told them to take their product down, went later in the day and said, "Okay, now I'm going to watch you take your product down." So they were forcing these stores to close left and right with actually no law or legislation. These emergency orders
Right.
are
Which
guidances.
I had these
So
questions because no one
yeah,
was talking about legislation on the news. I was like, can he legally do this?
it's a guidance. So who knows?
That's a
They're being implemented by law
guidance.
enforcement. So we'll see. But unfortunately, what that means, as we joke, because that's kind of funny, but these business owners are
Yeah, it sucks.
with no notice are closed. So we're local retailers. We're not regional companies. We're not national companies. We're not
Right.
online retailers. Most of us are local retail sales. So the way I grow my business and expand, like any other business, is to maximize the amount of inventory I have, prepare myself for future openings.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times where a lot of our stores aren't very liquid. A lot of our liquidity is tied up in product.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these stores who are expecting to expand in the near future have stocked up months,
Yeah.
sometimes months worth of inventory,
Yep.
and now they're told you can't open tomorrow when tomorrow was how they were going to pay their rent for
Yep.
October, So now it's let alone that's their store rent, let alone their home mortgages,
Right. Yeah. They
their
can't
kids,
even.
their
You can't
food
even
on the
think about.
table.
I mean, think about all the, like you said, all the money. Like it's funny you bring that up. There's a guy that opened a vape shop like a half mile from the house 2 weeks ago, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Done. Like
Yeah.
he bought all that inventory. He hasn't even had time to like even
Yeah,
sell
and
the
we're still
initial
able to
investment.
sell, but I have a friend who owns a store here in Iowa who was already in the process of opening another store when the sun down, and it opened last week. He's like, nobody's coming in
So what are the
because
rumblings in Iowa?
So we're pretty blessed. Even before me, Iowans for Alternatives to Smoking and Tobacco was very active. Very early on, we had a lobbyist. We pay a lot of money to this lobbyist to keep, his ear to the ground, but
Mm-hmm.
also to keep whispering into the ears of different legislators in Iowa on what it is, why it is here, why it's a safer alternative, and that's kept the rumblings down pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
We're also blessed in that lobbyists and Iowans for Alternatives to Smoking and Tobacco got legislation put in place several years ago that no municipality in the state of Iowa can alter a rule, regulation, or law regarding the e-cigarette industry without that law being a statewide law. So
Okay.
like my municipality, Clive, that's the one of the suburbs my store is in. Another's Ankeny. They can't come out and say we don't want you to sell e-cigarettes anymore. It has to be a statewide law.
Okay.
So we had that. We gained protection from the Clean Air Act here, so you can't smoke indoors, but you can vape at a vape shop.
Right.
It's owner discretion. So we had a lot of safety nets that other places didn't. The non-incorporated section of LA. So in Los Angeles, there's a lot of suburbs, but there's a lot of what's called unincorporated areas of the city. All of those areas are governed by this like city council board. They outlawed vape products. Like, so you can be on one block in LA and buy vape and go to another block on LA and not buy vape. So
Oh my God.
it's super crazy. But luckily here in Iowa, we were super protected because of the work that this organization before me and now with me have put in, and the work of Mike Triplett, our lobbyist. He's an insanely awesome guy who pushed a lot of that. So in Iowa, we're pretty, as of now, unless the governor goes crazy, we're in a really good place.
But even
in preparation, it's federal that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
We're blessed to have Tom Millers, our state attorney general. He spoke overseas at a symposium on e-cigarettes and support 2 years ago. Like, we're just in a pretty blessed state. But federally, the FDA, a lot of people don't know a lot about the FDA, and that's because I don't know. Nobody knows a lot about
but
the
I
FDA.
think that's quite intentional. If
Absolutely, there's a lot of alternative motives there. Scott Goldtree, the outgoing FDA commissioner, one day you thought he was working with us, the next day he was against us. Now he's on the board for Pfizer, who owns Chantix, and he's actually speaking out in support of us. But it's you never know what the real motive is.
Well, until someone writes you a bigger check, right? Everyone has a price.
Exactly. And on the board, obviously, his only role is to advise them. So his personal statements, if he supports us, that's fine. We're obviously against Chantix. I think most people that have taken it are against Chantix.
Yeah, I've known some people that have
it's insane.
So even though legally, from a perspective, you're legally okay, like, what have you guys seen in your stores or around
nationwide?
Yeah, because of the hysteria. Like, that's definitely influences and impacted, what's going on.
Yeah, and on that, I think it's different everywhere. So I'm a pretty active part of an owners group we have on Facebook, where we all just kind of share things that are going on, help each other out, share distros, stuff like that. And the state of that group is in shambles right now, because you have people who, were doing one number and now they're doing 10% of that number, and for a store to pay its bills, it's an employees. I mean, I have 2 stores. I have a massive payroll every week with just 2. I can't imagine stores that have more. Payroll is a huge chunk of what we make. And so stores are closing in states where they're legal because this hysteria has led to a drop in sales. It's really about, I think, it's very local centric. We have one store where I'm very, very blessed to say last month we barely were under. We were under, but not by much. The unfortunate side of that is we've grown at such a rate every month over month, even when it's supposed to be a slow time of year. We've never dropped a single month ever. So to see a drop as it's getting cooler out in Iowa is a pretty big drop for us. But in the same note, 18 miles away, I have another store who is it's in shambles. I mean, our employees sit there, and it's lucky for us, it's making enough to pay payroll, to pay its bills. But there's no growth, there's no further development coming in that store right now until something changes. But I've seen it all over the country. Owners that I know, respect, I've been in their stores from time to time, and hearing that they're not doing $100 in sales a day. You know, and at the
I
end of
didn't
the
realize
day,
it was. Whew. So
yeah,
so so like the crazy thing is now though that now that we've gone through this, like it's pretty much a month full of hysteria, I would call it, like this 3 or 4 weeks. Now that we have, but now we're getting like hard evidence, right?
yeah,
Like
hard
what
evidence.
hard evidence that it's not actually these juices. It's not actually actually anything to do with nicotine.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even at the earliest, Michigan, New York, the earliest hearings, there were doctors, there were medical professionals coming in and saying it can't be e-liquid.
Right.
E-liquid, for those that don't know, are consisted of vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, nicotine, and flavoring. The same flavoring we find in candy, alcohol. It's used all over. Our major flavoring companies are the same companies that support the same flavor in those industries. That's it. There's no
Yeah.
added chemicals to
Yeah.
e-cigarettes other than those four things. You can find all four of those things in the grocery store, by the way. So that's just something to note. Early on, and again, we were talking about personal growth. You learn more as things happen.
Yep.
Early on, it was assumed and believed that vitamin E acetate was the culprit, and vitamin E acetate, when inhaled, is a toxic chemical. Don't let me
No
steer you in
misleading.
the wrong
Yeah. Yeah.
direction.
I
It's a
definitely know
bad
that.
chemical, and that led to the discovery of the toy district in LA and the massive amounts of vitamin E acetate that was being, black market distributed to THC cart sellers all over the country. That led to NBC News going into the toy district, and with $210, they left the toy district with everything they needed to make 1,000 cartridges, except for the
That
THC,
so
including the vitamin E acetate.
that is
So
super insane, and I think from an educational perspective, if you're buying $20 THC carts, they're probably not
don't,
quality. They're probably filled.
unless you know the guy making it, don't,
Right.
because it's, and for me, what I tell my customers is, unfortunately, our it's illegal here in Iowa. So
Right.
one, if you're in Iowa, don't do it. But if you are doing it, stop. I mean,
But
it
I'm just
sucks.
saying, why are they
But
going after they immediate like the problem and the statement that I want to make is like they shouldn't even be the nicotine and vape juice and all that stuff shouldn't even be in the conversation as far as I'm concerned,
absolutely,
since now we have hard data. That's
yeah,
so the fact that no one's dialing back on this, or like Charlie Baker isn't going to repeal his
slowly
ban,
dialing back.
like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it doesn't even, it's not even part of the conversation now that we have all these studies coming forward and all this stuff. Charlie Baker hasn't said anything. The government of Massachusetts hasn't said anything. They haven't said anything federally. So why do you think that, now that we have evidence and we're getting scientific information, why do you think no one's,
It's one of the most
backpedaling?
blatant forms of corruption we've ever seen, because now even the CDC has come out, and in 77% of the cases they can already find the presence of myclobutanol, and this is a pesticide that is not just bad. When heat is applied to this pesticide, it turns into hydrogen cyanide.
Yes.
Like, there's no reason for this chemical to ever be introduced to a THC cartridge. So, let alone e-liquid, which it never has to date.
Right.
But the corruption that we're seeing now is something. I mean, I've never been a big fan of how our government runs, but at this point, it's even blowing me away.
It's literally in front of everybody too. It's
It's
just
blatant corruption.
It's
It's,
blatant.
we need you to smoke cigarettes, or we will have a leg up with the IQOS and the Hale. So as you mentioned, there's a device. Philip Morris, bless their hearts,
Bless
have
their
been
hearts.
they've been working on the FDA approval of, through the PMTA process, of a device that, it's not a cigarette, but it's basically a cigarette. You put it in and it doesn't combust, but the chemicals are still there. The tobacco's still there. It's still,
So when
they
you say
said after
chemicals are
5
still,
days, what? Go ahead.
you said the chemicals are still there. Is it literally like
It's
almost
basically a cigarette
heating
without
up a
combustion.
cigarette?
Yeah,
Okay.
without a combustion. So,
What?
and there's already now been studies done, because for those that don't know, I only know because of Vegas.
Right.
At every pit table in Vegas, there's people from all around the world. You see hundreds of these IQOS devices because they're already for sale overseas. they're like, oh God, this thing is the best thing that ever happened to me. But there's studies out there that showed after 5 days of IQOS use,
Yeah.
you already have lung deterioration. So this isn't
It's a
this isn't
cigarette.
the saving grace.
Yeah.
This is just a way for Philip Morris, who is involved in the MSA, to up their sales, which ups payments to the states. Another situation.
What's the hail? What's the hail? Who's that owned
Yeah,
by?
that's what I'm getting into now.
Okay.
The Hail is a device that I guess is, I don't know if it's almost done going through PMTA, but I know it's in the process. And I'm only going to say the one that they've guaranteed. Cuomo, the New York governor, is involved, and some of the major tobacco companies are involved. So it's another device that is going to reach the hands of
Cuomo's
politicians.
involved. It's probably not good.
Yeah, money will be in politicians' pockets from that device as well. So that's unfortunately how our government runs. And the IQS and the Hail, they're not devices that are going to change the game like the e-cigarette industry has. And unfortunately, the attack has been on flavors, and that's what they're using is flavor bans. And our industry is a huge proponent, and it's backed up by facts, is that adults switch from combustible tobacco to e-cigarette products because of flavors.
Right.
For the first year, or for the first 6 months, I was in my store 7 days a week. For the first year, I was in my stores full time. Now I play more of a passive role, but I've watched hundreds, if not thousands, of people convert from combustible tobacco to e-cigarettes. And I think maybe twice have I ever been asked, do you have something that tastes like my cigarette? So it's, at least in our stores, it's well above 95% of conversions happen with flavored products. So people, I hear the fight from Tobacco Free Kids and from all these organizations like, well, if we take flavors, why would they stop vaping and go back to smoking cigarettes when they could just vape a tobacco product? And they're not enjoyable. And at the end of the day, flavors and the variety are what keep people off cigarettes, including myself.
Yeah.
So you take that away and you leave one option of a tobacco flavor, and that appeal for conversion is eliminated for 98% of people. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like this great rebuttal. And unfortunately, those who've defended our industry in some of these hearings haven't had a comeback. But that's the comeback is, in my store, that just means 98% of the people I've helped switch wouldn't have switched to begin with.
Yeah.
So the attack on flavors, it's crazy. And that leads me to, like, our industry isn't just like, give us our flavors or, and that's it. We have things that we want to work with legislation. We've approached all of our legislation here in Iowa. We had over 300 representatives in our industry from across the country that were on Capitol Hill 2 weeks ago, approaching all of their representatives simultaneously, presenting plans of action. We don't want e-cigarettes in the hands of children. We never
I don't think it seems like a no-brainer to me, right? Like,
well, you would think that. So the FDA ran stings all across the country.
Yeah.
And it was something like 18% failed. And then they break them down, and it was like less than 2% of e-cigarette stores, sole e-cigarette stores, failed. It's all happening in convenience stores, tobacco shops,
right,
where they're failing at the same rate with underagers trying to buy tobacco.
Yeah, because they're not policing it at all.
Yeah, these high school kids know they can go to this place to buy it, and that's who's failing. So there's some things that we as an industry are not conceding. Instead, we're trying to be proactive and say, we're in this fight with you. Every vape shop I've ever been into, we strictly ID. I mean, 3 fails, I lose my license. I lose my license, I'm out of business.
Yep.
My employees know your first offense, you're fired. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. 2 years running 2 locations, we've never failed a sting at either location. We get a letter every time we pass. We've never even been at risk. And so we don't want this stuff in the hands of kids. We're right there with you, but we still need access to flavors to allow that conversion rate to happen.
Yep.
So, things like T21, I fought it in the spring. Now I've grown through this, and I've seen the benefits of T21 and what it can do. I'm not just saying bring on T21 so I can still sell flavors. I've changed my stance.
Right. Yeah.
How nice would it be to have that in government? Like, for people to look at something bipartisanly and say, wow, this makes sense. Adult only facilities, I think, is crucial. can get in and out of convenience stores, Walmart's, CVS's, and a
Yeah,
lot of them
sure.
are
I
starting
mean,
to sell
CVS is not even.
stuff anyway.
They stopped selling tobacco
Oh, they
products
stopped selling tobacco products, didn't
like
they?
like two
A couple
3
years
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's getting, and not just e-cigarettes, all tobacco products.
Right.
Get them out of there. You're because no offense to the government, but yeah, you might see lower e-cigarette use, but cigarette use among youth is going to skyrocket in the
Yeah,
next
of
24
course. I mean,
So, and that, what's crazy is that was what I fought about T21 with, is in the
yeah,
states that raised the tobacco, the e-liquid and tobacco age to 21, there were huge rises in cigarette use because it's easier for kids to get cigarettes than it is to get vape because it's harder to buy from us.
yes.
So that was my fight back then.
No,
But
I mean, it's a logical argument, right?
yeah. And also harsher penalties. There's a lot of states that don't penalize youth. Here in Iowa, I've talked to principals and teachers that I know personally that they catch a kid with a jewel, they throw it in the box. They don't call the cops.
Right.
I'm going to be the first to admit I got an underage possession of tobacco ticket at my high school.
Wow.
Like, I had to write a ticket. They wrote me a ticket. My parents had to come in. We had to pay the ticket. There were penalties involved. A lot of states don't even require licensing to open a vape shop. We have always here in Iowa.
Uh-huh.
It's something we feel strongly about because you don't just want somebody opening up shop on the corner and who knows what they're selling. A license ensures that we're buying from the right places, that we're supplying the right products, and that leads us to our last thing is what has completely destroyed our industry and caused this youth epidemic is what are 99 out of 100 teenagers using. They're using, if you don't know what it is, it's called a Juul.
Yep.
And so what I vape a little device. It barely puts out any cloud. And I vape 0.06 milligrams
Okay.
nicotine is in my juice. So how that correlates to a Juul is 0.5. So
Wow.
it's 9 1/3 times more potent than my 0.6. So in my vape shops, the highest e-liquid until Saltnik came out, the highest e-liquid you could ever buy is 0.12.
Okay.
So a Juul is more than 4 times more potent. So you're wondering why these high school kids are getting addicted, why they're getting headaches, why they're so they want it and they want it now. It's because Juul comes out, who's now 30% owned by Altria, a tobacco company. In fact,
which was used to be owned by Philip Morris, correct?
yeah, I think there was some correlation there. I don't have evidence. I don't
Says
know that.
it says headquarters. It says Altria Group, formerly Philip Morris Company. So I assume it was
There you
something
go,
they
yeah.
created and spun off.
Yeah. So just last week, the CEO of Juul stepped down and was replaced by an Altria executive.
Yeah, I saw that.
But it's these Juul devices. They looked like USBs. So early on, when nobody knew what they were easy to have around the school. Yep. Nobody knew. They were way more addictive. Same with tobacco before they were regulated. So they were getting kids hooked. They were marketing a device that appealed to kids. I didn't want a USB cartridge. I wanted a vape. You know, as an adult. So they brought out a device that appealed to kids with a very, very, very high level of nicotine in them, and it changed the game. And that's what Big Tobacco did, back in the day. So they're just taking the same playbook, and that created this insane youth epidemic. The youth epidemic wasn't there before. It's hard to hide. Back in the day, we didn't even have these 2 years ago. We had these big.
Yeah, people were wearing that shit around their neck.
Yeah, yeah, like it was. You can't hide that stuff.
Right, yeah.
So this introduction of pod systems in super high nicotine concentrates, there's no reason to have it. So it's another not concession, but need that needs to be regulated. It's not good for the industry. It's not good for the vapor. It's not good for anything. So those are 5 pretty big things that we want to push. We want to work with with legislation to make regulation that's gonna make those changes. Because those are the only things that we're going to see a heavy impact on. Outlawing vape is going to create a black market that is so much riskier
we've already
than what we have in place.
And since nicotine, obviously, vape juice and all that stuff is not the problem. The black market that we're seeing from the THC perspective, more people are going to die. If you take away something that people are already participating in and like we said earlier, humans have been participating in using substances since since we just like
Beginning
eat
of
this
time,
plant, see
yeah.
what happens. Like, you know what I'm saying? So 85% of the illicit THC is coming out of Southern California specifically, which is where you're seeing. You talked about the chemical that's these pesticides are being sprayed on these plants, and there was a game warden that was talking about how they have to sit on these grow ops for 2 weeks because they don't know the last time that this chemical was sprayed on these plants, and it's obviously a chemical that's banned in the United States. They bring it
Yeah.
over from Mexico, so they have to sit on these grow ops for 2 weeks because they don't know the last time they've been sprayed. Because if you come into distance of breathing the chemical off the plants, you actually can die. It's actually deadly based on, that 2 week period of when it's been sprayed on the plant. So if you think about this, they let it sit around for 2 weeks. They make distillate out of it. They sell these cartridges for $20. Fill them with whatever they want. Put 20% THC in them. That residue of those pesticides are still all up in that cartridge, all up in that oil, and that's what we're seeing. So, like, I guess the question at the end of the day is, why is your like we've already gone over it, but I'm just like kind of summing it up.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
why is the nicotine industry being attacked? Why are we saying ban instead of regulate? Like, regulation, once you regulate these things, then they're safe or safer. Like that happens in food. That happens with like you stick a sticker on a lawnmower that says "Don't stick your arm in it, dummy." That's been regulated.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally someone regulated because someone did that.
Yeah, I put a post out. It's not viral, but it's been shared 74 times. So I
That's
kind of feel
hey man,
cool
that's viral.
that's mini viral. But it says, so I'm just going to read it because I think it
Go
puts
for
it
it,
the
man.
best. But it says, let me try to add some perspective to our situation to those that don't vape. If they found that moonshine made in someone's bathtub and a cabin in the woods was getting people sick, and they in turn banned all sales of beer anywhere and blamed it on youth drinking, this is the America we live in. The rest is just political, so I'll leave that out. But
please don't take this away.
Yeah, but it's insane
It is.
and they knew early on this wasn't e-cigarettes.
Right, of course.
You don't believe the kid that said, "I only vape."
I don't smoke marijuana. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they knew right away what this was.
Yeah.
So to use it as a catapult to literally at this point national corruption, it's, to me, it's just, if they can do this with this industry, what's really going on with public health?
There's no means to an end.
Else. I mean, it's sad to see. So in Michigan, when Michigan passed the ban, they had 14 days to get rid of their products.
Oh, that's. I mean, at least they gave them a 2 week window. Here they gave
that
them
14 days
hours.
was up at midnight last night.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine, Dan Sears, I'm sure he doesn't care if I share his name. He owned a massive e-liquid distribution company in Michigan, a very big company. And he also owned teens, like 12, 13, 14, 15 stores, something. Okay. I think it's even more than that. But they had 14 days, and last night he shared pictures of them literally shipping everything they own because they couldn't possess or distribute after midnight last night. So this company, all its stores, all its employees, pretty much overnight are out of work, are everything they were doing to try to help the lives of other people is now illegal. And it's just been
legal on the backs of big tobacco that is lined pockets.
It's been so hard to watch because we're talking about why they might be doing it and how much it sucks and what the real issue is. But at the end of the day, like this what's going on is going to ultimately cost the jobs of hundreds of thousands of people in the US and livelihoods. And much more important, it's going to eliminate the opportunity for a safer alternative to combustible tobacco. 1,300 people are going to die today from combustible tobacco illnesses. Today, 1,300 people. Today. Tomorrow, 1,300 people. The next day, 1,300 people. And we're not talking about banning combustible tobacco products. We're not talking about taking Marlboro Reds off the shelf. Alcohol, I don't think it should be banned, but it's killing people every day. We're not talking about banning alcohol. So what's the real issue, and what can we do as citizens to bring it to the forefront to change the narrative? And I hope, for me at least, and for my customers that it's not too late. But
Yeah.
it just goes to show how crazy and deep the corruption goes when it's so incredibly blatant
Well,
and we
I mean,
ignore the
and it
evidence.
goes back to this is why even if this reaches like 5 people, at least we educated those 5 people, which is
Hmm.
what I've always been like. We have to come together as people that are willing to investigate and look deeper into everything because, like you said, it doesn't stop with vape.
No,
That's just this is a blatant overreach, and I feel like sometimes, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or else, but I feel like all right, we can do this. Let's see how people respond. Let's see how far we can push that envelope with our
yeah,
overreach and just be in control of more of your rights. Like I don't want to get political, but I'm saying sometimes it does feel like that. And unfortunately, most people just, when they're reading the news, like I said, they just, oh, what vape is killing people? 14 people have died so far, and we've been doing this for 4 weeks. People have been vaping for what, 10 years?
oh
And like
yeah,
you
over
said,
10
you're
years.
talking like we ain't banning, I mean, we aren't banning cigarettes. We aren't banning Big
Yeah,
Macs. Like, I mean, like but it has to come back to money then, and it has to.
absolutely.
And I think our lesson is how do we? I think often, at least our generation, we're the same age. I'm 34, you're 35.
Yeah,
How do we? I've always looked at government as an obstacle, and maybe it's as I get older, I want to try to figure out how to not look at government as an obstacle and see how I can make government work for me. And maybe that
yeah.
comes as you get. I think as you get older, you get a little bit more conservative when it comes to a fiscal perspective, anyway.
The crazy thing, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal.
But
It
I think
doesn't work,
most people are though. Like
but that's how I feel. Yeah,
the problem is eventually we have to get away from this. Like it's us versus them, and it's blue versus red
yep.
because that's
It's got to
generally what they
stop.
want. But that's what they want, right? Because as long as it's blue versus red and us
They're both
versus
getting
them,
paid, which
yeah,
is
then they're
crazy.
both
Yeah,
like. To
the
me, it's all the
two-party
same
system
party.
is
It's
corrupt
purple.
in
It's
itself.
purple. It's
Yeah,
purple. Like
and it's like what what do we do to change that narrative, that script? I don't know, but yeah, the way it works now, it unfortunately doesn't matter if blue or red wins. The same people are still getting paid.
the shit we shuffle around every 4 years, it's meaningless, as George Carlin would say.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I don't know what we do, but we the older I get, the more involved I'm going to be getting
Right, which
because
is what I think I mean, that's what I have to start doing, right? I have to start educating. I have to start getting involved because there's nothing else that that I can do.
yeah, and
So,
it sucks because I mean right now obviously the everything on my mind is the exit strategy because it looks like that's the eminent thing, and obviously my thoughts are what can I get that will be scalable and not be controlled or regulated in this way.
right, yeah. So I
But
was going to
that should be
ask.
the last thing on my head. I should
Yeah.
be thinking about better serving my customers. And,
Yep.
fortunately, our company, 515 Vape and Disc Golf, is in a position where I'm acting today like nothing's happening as far as business because I have to be there for my customer. This week, I've ordered more e-liquid than I ever have because I don't know if that company's state will get shut down
I
tomorrow.
mean, that makes sense though. That's a boss move. By the way, he's like, hey, by the way, I'm just ordering. Yeah, I'm just
So
gonna do it.
another example of that, what's this Wednesday? Tomorrow I do a walkthrough on ice for the Iowa Wild, Minnesota Wild's under team,
Yeah.
and Friday is the home opener, and we're doing a huge
Cool.
event at Second Intermission, and we have a massive partnership with them this year, and it's a way to also give back and be involved in the community. I'm
Yep.
involved in several things around the industry here or around the community here because that's a big part of who I am. I want to give back to the
Yep.
community. I want to help the community whatever way I can. But we're trucking ahead. Our banners are printed and they're going up Friday night.
You get it.
And I'm gonna pray and hope that something will stop the corruption and that every day more and more comes to light and that we will make it through this. And luckily, for us, I am transparent. That's why I'm doing this. I wear everything on my sleeve. Some
Yep.
people hate that. I'm marrying the woman in my life because of it. Like that's who I am. That's how I live my life. I don't hide things. I talk. I post a lot on Facebook. You
For
don't
sure.
like it, unfollow me. Like it's easy.
That's
But
what
because
I
of that, I treat my business the same way.
Yeah.
Like my customers are everything to us. So it's like we through that, luckily, the first year I was in my store almost every single day. The first 6 months I was every day. And we built this brand loyalty not just for our own profit, but because we cared about our customers. And through that, with our original store, we're in a really lucky position, because the reason sales haven't dropped much is because those people trusted us enough to come into our stores and be like, what's really going on?
Yep.
And to listen. And we have, a tablet there, and we can show them this is what's going on. Like, don't just listen to me, or direct them to articles and reports and studies. And we had that with our first store. So I'm blessed to say that with that store, I don't fear, if we make it through this, we're going to be okay. So I'm going to truck forward. Unfortunately, like the rest of the country, my newer store is it turns one next week.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have that brand loyalty and that commitment yet. And that's what I fear. We run our business so differently. Like, we interact with our customers. We're out in the community. The chambers know us. We're at entrepreneurial events, like spreading the word. Where other stores, so many people got into this industry because they wanted to save lives, which is awesome, but they didn't have the business or the know-how or the
Right.
aptitude or the community involvement. So now their stores, instantly this happens, and they have no customers, and they can't put food on their table. And I yearn for them, but to your viewers and the people that come across this, it's all about doing things the right way from day one, and putting one foot in front of another, and doing it with the right purpose and the right goal. And then when things do happen, you're in a better position to continue on, whether it ends or whether it doesn't. I'm still going to be an extremely active part of the Des Moines community. I'm still going to love on the people I've met through this experience. And, lately, I don't know why, but I wake up in a good mood, and until I turn my phone on and see the next state that's banning it. But right now, my motto every day is make today great.
Yep.
Because if I don't, I'm just going to succumb to what's going on. And unfortunately, we've seen through this, we've seen through many other things in the past, our government's corrupt.
Yep.
And I don't see it changing anytime soon. So I
Yeah,
guess that's just
it's unfortunate, but I mean,
very unfortunate.
I wake up every day, and I always tell people that I wake up every day. I make the choice to be happy. My situation obviously is different than yours because there's a lot on the line here. But I could easily go in and get fired tomorrow, and then have to worry about So I guess we'll leave you with 30 seconds to go ahead and make your last statement. I think what you just said was pretty good to wrap it up. I mean, I think we're pretty much there. And
I mean, through this, whether we end or whether we don't, I've developed so much personally, and I didn't think that's where this conversation would go.
Hey, it's
but
fine.
There was snippets in it that made me realize, just through this, entire career and experience recently, how much I've grown as a person, like my views on T21 changing. And I guess my appeal to the audience is not just with vape, but with anything. Like, it's all about being self-aware and knowing who you are and where you want to be and where you want to go, and then taking the action to do that. And in this, that's correlated, because I want to stay in business. I want to be there for my customers. So I'm going to do everything I can, but also in every other aspect of life. Like, I'm so much greater of a human being today because I've gone through the last 3 weeks.
Yep.
And as long as I view every opportunity and every obstacle in that same light, I'm going to wake up tomorrow a better person than I went to bed tonight. So that's kind of, even though it's not correlated to much we talked about,
hey,
that's the thing. And just know, e-cigarettes aren't killing people.
It's illicit THC. Stop buying dank vapes, right?
515 Vape and Disc Golf. But yeah, we're super stoked for what's to come.
Yeah.
We hope this isn't the end. And I massively appreciate you having me on, Adam. It's great to get it out there in the world and let the truth be told.
Hey, I massively appreciate you doing this for me. I know that we met, just literally poker, online poker. So, but I appreciate you getting emotional, because the last 3 minutes are gold. That's why I like to talk to people. It doesn't remind, it doesn't matter what the topic is. You always figure out, when people have their backs up against a wall, that's when their true colors come out. And that is the greatest thing about talking to people about any topic. And that's what I'm trying to do here by it doesn't matter if it's vape, it doesn't matter if it's poker, it doesn't matter if it's food, it doesn't matter, because if you can get people to talk to something about they're passionate about and see their true colors, that's when, life becomes interesting, and that's how we learn from each other. Like, I'm going to learn a lot. I just learned a lot, and now I'm educated, and now, now I can go out into the world, and I feel like, I have more of a passion about the subject even more than I did before. So
And I think that's awesome. I think that's just a sneak peek of what Truth Be Told will become then.
oh,
Because
thank you,
with
thank
with
you.
that attitude, with that vision, dude, you're gonna go places, and you've got the right attitude going into it. I'm excited for what you're gonna do with this podcast as well.
All right, I super appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you later.
For sure.
Peace.